The family was thrown into turmoil when the mother vanished without a trace. Left to fend for themselves, the father took on the sole responsibility of caring for the family. For 23 years, her disappearance remained a mystery, until one day during a vacation, the husband stumbled upon a startling revelation. So it was finally time the last child moved out of the house. Now all the kids were studying it at college. Nathan thought it was time to enjoy a lovely holiday. He deserved this holiday like no other because the last 23 years of his life were not just a simple walk in the park. Because 23 years ago, his wife suddenly disappeared. This meant Nathan needed to take care of the family alone. Took some time for the family to learn to live without their mother, and they also wondered what happened. No one expected it would be Nathan who would find out the truth behind her disappearance. Shortly after Nathan waved his youngest son off to college, he felt he deserved a break. Ever since his wife's disappearance, he spent all his time and effort raising his 5 children. So a vacation was a luxury Nathan couldn't afford before. He always worried the kids wouldn't be okay without their mother. While packing, he sat down on the bed for a moment. Next to him on his bedside table was an old picture of him and his wife, Ellie. He still missed her so very much and wondered the same desperate question every day. "Will I ever see you again?" he mumbled. Since Ellie disappeared, Nathan couldn't be with another woman. She was the only one for him. He remembered that day in December like it was yesterday. The day he lost his soulmate. Usually she greeted him when she came home and they would discuss their day. But this time it stayed silent. He remembered the kids playing cheerfully, not aware their mother was gone. Then the taxi horn woke him from his daydream. "Coming," Nathan yelled while grabbing his stuff and walking to the front door. It was time for that vacation he deserved. Finally, some rest, Nathan mumbled. At least that's what he thought. His destination was Como in Italy. It was his favorite place in the world because he would visit it yearly with his dear Ellie. But this time was different, very different. It was 23 years since he had seen this place for the last time, and now he went without Ellie during the flight. Nathan's thoughts kept returning to his wife and her disappearance. Nathan immediately felt something was wrong, so he contacted the police, but after 3 days they still couldn't find her. He would never forget the face of the police officer who told him they stopped the search from the window of the plane. He saw Lake Como below him. What a special place! It was high mountain peaks, surrounded the crystal blue water. The image brought him back to all the fond times he spent there, unaware that something would be different this time, and that those memories would confront him. As he stepped out of the plane and set foot on Italian soil, he felt the sun's warmth on his face and the fresh mountain air filling his lungs. The view that greeted him was nothing short of magical and hit him with a wave of nostalgia. Was it the right decision to come here? The memories of those happy times flooded his mind. It brought sadness to his heart. It was the tradition of him and his wife, but that experience was taken from him. How could he enjoy this vacation without her? Not aware of this vacation would change his life in ways he couldn't have expected. The taxi made its way through the narrow roads that led to Lake Como. "Wow," mumbled Nathan. It was like nothing changed over the last 23 years. Little towns were dotted along the shoreline, each more charming than the previous, and the air filled with a recognizable scent. Did he remember all these years? The scent lingered in his memory. Was he able to recognize something like that after all this time? Nathan shrugged as he watched the buildings disappear in the distance. Not much later, the taxi stopped and they arrived at his location. He shook the thoughts out of his head and got out ready to relax. Nathan paid and thanked the driver, after which he entered the beautiful lake house. Nathan didn't know what he would like to do when he arrived here. Ellie always planned their vacation, and he never went alone before. So he decided to go somewhere near, not knowing how important that decision would be. For going to bed, Nathan took a quick glance at the map. His cottage was quite remote, but a large city was nearby. Emily, he read out loud. That would be his first activity of the weekend, exploring Emily. He couldn't remember if he went there before, but he would soon find out. From the moment Nathan set foot in the city, memories flooded his brain. This was the place where he walked around with Ellie. The two young parents couldn't keep their hands off of each other. Daydreaming, he walked down a narrow alleyway toward the center. All of a sudden, Nathan was scared to death. A sudden smell reached his nostrils. It was the same smell he had recognized before while in the taxi. Was he mistaken, or did he really know this smell really well? It was like he was in some sort of trance. What was that smell again? It was so specific. Nathan's mind was racing. He didn't care if he looked like an addict who was finally allowed to enjoy his addiction again. He held his nose up in the wind and sniffed. Where did it come from? He moved around frantically, trying to locate the source. He needed to know what it was, and then his nose led him to a small neighborhood where he saw several open windows. Aha! He exclaimed happily. When he got closer, it became apparent the smell came from one of them. But which one? He got right under them, and suddenly he realized it. He knew what the scent was. No, it can't be. He shook his head furiously. The thought that went through his head was impossible. It just couldn't be true. Like this scent smelled exactly like Ellie's apple pie. The memory brought tears to his eyes, but also a slight smile. What a coincidence this was, but was it really? As quick as the smile appeared, so fast it disappeared again. He suddenly realized something. Ellie's apple pie was extremely unique. It was a family recipe passed down for generations, and the smell was so distinctive due to its special herbs, and those herbs were sold at a particular shop in Mexico. Ellie once told him that her great-grandmother grew up on a plain in Mexico where these special herbs would grow. The herbs would create a sweet and herbal scent, which was very recognizable. All this information rushed through his head. What was going on? This couldn't be a coincidence. He initially thought the whole idea of the vacation was for Nathan to relax and enjoy some free time, but since he smelled the apple pie, his body felt tense and his mind was racing. He couldn't just let this go. He needed to know what was happening. So before Nathan knew it, he knocked on the door. Nathan didn't really think things through and was surprised by his sudden action, but he couldn't walk away now. He heard some stumbling on the other side of the door as footsteps approached. Nathan thought the matter would soon be clarified, but what he didn't know was that his life was about to change. A young woman opened the door. Nathan couldn't help but feel disappointed. A small part of him had hoped to see Ellie open that door. The swing of the door caused another wave of apple pie scent to be sent in his direction. Then, a small voice disrupted his thoughts. "Can I help you?" the young lady asked. Nathan was so deep into his thought that she startled him. Even though he was the one who had knocked on her door in the first place, he stared at her for a while, not knowing what to say. Then he decided to just come clean. Nathan explained that he was enjoying the city and wandered into the neighborhood when he suddenly smelled something amazing. "Your pie," he said with a smile as he pointed at it. Then he asked her how it was made, or she used a recipe, and the answer would shock him. "I learned how to make it from the woman by the lake," the young lady replied happily. She was delighted that Nathan liked the smell of her pie so much that he knocked on her door, but that response wasn't what he expected. How would someone here know the recipe for the pie? "Lay by the lake," Nathan repeated softly. He surely heard that right, but he was also sure this recipe was only going around in Ellie's family. Ellie was the only child and never gave Nathan or the kids the recipe. Did she give it to someone here? He needed to find out. But when Nathan asked the young lady who the lady at the lake was or where he could find her, she hesitated. She was clearly uncomfortable giving such information away to a stranger. He understood her feelings and thought of something that could persuade her, not knowing the shocking truth that would be revealed. Nathan decided the best course of action was for him to tell her a story. This way, she would get to know him and maybe talk to him about the woman of the lake. But when he started his life story, the young lady suddenly interrupted him. "How do you know her name is Ellie?" The two looked at each other in shock for a while. Nathan was flabbergasted, but eventually found his voice. "What do you mean?" He said the young lady repeated her question and asked how he knew the lady's name was Ellie. Then all fell into place inside Nathan's head. The lady at the lake was named Ellie. And she knew how to make Ellie's pie. Nathan couldn't believe what he was hearing. The young lady saw his confused and surprised look, and he immediately started to tell his story. Nathan noticed the story had the effect he hoped it would have. Before he finished the story, the young lady took off her apron and told him she would take him to Lake Como. She wasn't going to be the person to spoil this potential meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nathan exclaimed. Then he thought of something. Why would Ellie be here all this time? He followed the young lady to the shore of the lake. The thought echoed through his mind. Why would she be here? Why didn't she contact him? Then, a tiny cabin at the edge of the water came into view. There she lives, the lady said. Determined to get answers, Nathan walked toward the cabin. With each step, the tension increased. Nathan couldn't believe what was happening. He pinched himself to make sure he wasn't dreaming. Ouch, he mumbled. What would he do if he saw Ellie again after all these years? He wanted to ask her many questions, but would he like the answers? He saw a window with a curtain. Behind it, a ghost-like figure walked back and forth the whole time. Then he saw the curtains move a little from left to right. A woman slowly pushed them aside. Suddenly, she became visible, and Nathan looked straight at her. He couldn't believe his eyes. The woman in the window froze for a second when her eyes interlocked with Nathan's. Then she abruptly closed the curtains. Nathan was stunned. He stopped in his step and didn't know what to do. Even though he hoped for this moment, he now realized he wasn't prepared. It was Ellie. For 23 years, Nathan had thought, dreamed, and hoped for this moment, and it was finally here. He still couldn't move a muscle. And then the woman showed herself again. It was undeniable. Ellie. He screamed. They stared at each other, both unsure what to do. Then Nathan took action. Nathan quickly walked toward the door. He broke down in tears. While waiting for her to open the door, he was no longer in control of his emotions. He was about to reunite with his long-lost love, the mother of his children. Nathan heard the lock of the door slowly turn. He, crying. Ellie pulled the door open. Nathan flew right into her arms. The embrace lasted almost 5 minutes. Ellie asked him if he wanted to sit down. They were speechless as they slowly moved into the sofa's pillow. Nathan sat down, but Ellie couldn't sit still and acted nervous. Then she got up. Nathan took a seat on the couch and looked around. He saw a lot of pictures of a guy in his 20s. When Ellie came back, she looked at Nathan with a scared look on her face. That's when Nathan asked her the questions that had haunted his mind for 23 years. What happened? Nathan watched as the color drained from her face, leaving her complexion ghostly pale. She knew this question was coming, but still dreaded it intensely. She opened her mouth to say something, but before any words came out, she was overcome by emotions. I made a terrible mistake. She eventually managed to get out. Nathan looked worried and told her she shouldn't worry and just explain. Ellie took a deep breath and started, and she told him she had met someone on their last vacation, on the night Nathan had stayed in the cabin sick, and that when she and Nathan returned home, she was pregnant. The last thing Ellie wanted was for her family to grow up with a bastard child, so she returned to Lake Como to raise the child with its father, but now her son lived with his father in Milan, leaving Ellie alone. Can you forgive me? She asked. Nathan had other plans in mind. Nathan got up and sat down next to Ellie. He was furious on the one hand, but so happy on the other hand. There have been so many disaster scenarios haunting his mind for all those years. Come home, darling, suggested Nathan. Then we will see how we will approach it further. Please. Ellie couldn't believe that Nathan reacted like that after what he did to her and their children. The two hugged each other again, and Nathan stayed overnight with Ellie for a few days. Then Ellie went back home with Nathan. There, they resumed their lives together after being separated for 23 years. It had been, 6 months since Nathan and Ellie had met at Lake Como. The two now live in their old home again. For the kids, it was bizarre to see their mother again. Most of them couldn't remember her at all. They were babies when she disappeared, but for some it was hard. However, slowly but surely, it worked out. Nathan and Ellie were trying to rebuild their lives. She told Nathan everything, and they started a new one when everything was out in the open. Eventually, everything returned to how it was before she disappeared, and the family was whole and happy again. I'm eager to hear what you think about this story, so please feel free to leave your thoughts and insights in the comments section below. If you found this video engaging and enjoyable, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel for more content like this and share it with your friends and family to spread the joy. Take care of yourselves, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you all again in our upcoming videos.